is on the road making content for you with his podcast in a bag.
Hello, my name is Ben, and welcome to the Too Vague Podcast. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. This week, we've got a very packed day 3 to talk about. 2 of my favorite games were on this day, so let's get right into it. The first game that I saw on day 3 was a game called Swapmeat by One More Game. I had a conversation with creator, founder, and COO of One More Game, Jamie Stormbreaker. I didn't play it at the show, but afterwards I immediately enrolled in the 7th public beta test and tried it on my Mac. Recorded a couple of minor display sort of bugs, but boy, did I have a lot of fun with it. It's a third-person shooter with meta progression where you're unlocking weapons and perks. You've got a handful of things you need to do in the world. Generally, kill animals with one of the weapons that you select at the game hub, and then also these perks that you can level up as well, in addition to the weapons with the stuff that you collect through your missions. Each time you kill an enemy, there's a possibility that it will drop a body part. The body parts are legs, torso, and head. Each one of those, for the legs, it's a travel type of a power. So if you have the spider legs, for example, you can climb up things a little bit more easily. Or if you have the UFO legs, then you can fly further. Things of that nature. And then the body is sort of a power. For example, there's one that's like a laser, and then there's another one that freezes people. And I only played the first level, so I only got the body parts from the first planets in the beta test. 3 or 4 different planets. And then the head is a different kind of weapon. So you've got your primary weapon, which you pick, and your secondary weapon, which you pick, which are your actual weapons that stay the same. Through your gameplay, you can pick different ways in which you modify those weapons that you selected at the beginning. When you level up, you can press a button and then you can select a number of perks and things, some of which will impact weapons. The description on Steam is rip through hostile alien worlds, harvest mutant body parts mid-combat, and adapt faster than the enemies before they overwhelm you. Each alien you harvest gives you a new body part with unique powers. Triple jump legs, turret dropping torsos, grenade launching turkey heads. It tells a little bit about the story here. It says, welcome to Swapmeat, the co-op action roguelike shooter, where every kill makes you stronger and stranger. Your job, drop onto hostile planets, teaming with absurd enemy oddities, complete prime directives and collect meat samples, swap out body parts in real time, and survive long enough to receive your employee evaluation. Co-op for 1 to 4 players, but I played it mostly by myself when I was doing the beta test. Enemies will fly around and kind of alert a main enemy to your presence. It's just like a monstrous thing that is very difficult to take down, and you need to make sure you finish the mission as quickly as possible, or do your exploration of the open world as quickly as possible so those things don't attack you. Each time you complete a mission, it resets the monster, and then until your final mission where you have to protect some sort of a meat drill or something that's where it's trying to find meat samples. So I talked to Jamie Stormbreaker, as I mentioned before. Jamie has worked at a number of AAA studios, including Turbine Games, Riot Games, most notably as far as AAA. His company partner, Patrick Wyatt, who has worked on Warcraft and has development experience in the AAA space. They've been developing this game for about 2 years, which is unfathomable to me, just because I know a lot of times it takes a really long time, but for 2 years working on this so far, boy, it's such a good game. I'm guessing a lot of that AAA experience kind of lent itself to the efficiency of development. We talked about how they used a philosophy of alpha-driven development, which is a game development methodology where you release early playable versions of the game and expose them to small groups of external testers. So it's just basically a sequence of testing and balancing the game over and over again that kind of builds the game that way. In this case, I mean, it was the 7th beta test, which was the final one that I participated in. So it was pretty much well done, pretty much well done, like meat, pretty much well done. No, almost to completion. They are supposed to release, I believe, in October as their full release. So the goal is to basically develop or to test complex systems and marry them with content in sort of a organic kind of way, instead of using other types of software development methodologies like a waterfall or something to that nature. So the story is really interesting. You are a worker at Rangus Meats, whose motto is feeding the galaxy. Carl Rangus is a floating head in a jar in your base, which I guess is sort of a meeting space, a team hub. The company, Rangus Meats, developed smart meat technology and the magic of meat science. Jamie and I were talking about that, and I was like, yeah, I went to University of Illinois. My dorm was right next to the meat sciences building. And he goes, what? That's a thing? I was like, yep, that is a thing. I have no idea what was going on in there. And then I talked a little bit about the oddities of University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. They have an experimental cornfield there. And they also have this cow with a plastic stomach, or at least they did when I was there. So you can see the digestion or whatever. He also told me that the aesthetic of the game was pretty much inspired by 1990s Nickelodeon cartoons. The game features the music of Austin Wintory. Before we parted, Jamie told me his favorite word, which is wonder, and that just so happens to be the name of his wife, but he also really likes the word possibility. It seemed like he was interested in maybe being on the show, so hopefully we can have him come on. So the possibility of those words is high. It was one of my favorite games at the show, and then after, when I got a chance to play the beta, that was the deal sealer. Such a great game. Check it out on Steam now. Wishlisted or whatever, but it should be out sometime in the month. The next games that I saw from a Canadian developer based out of Vancouver, I played 2 games from Buffalo, and they were introduced to me by marketing lead Catherine Carr. They were Birdseed VR, which is a bird-watching, photo-taking, cataloging simulator sort of thing, described as a cozy VR game. You're seated in one spot, and you've got to look around and watch for birds to appear and take photos and stuff. In that sense, it reminded me a lot of Pokemon Snap. But the bit that I played didn't really have a lot of things that you were doing other than just taking photos. My impression is that it's early in development, so they're still trying to figure out the balance of the game mechanics. Very rudimentary but well done graphics, very cartoony looking. This is sort of a joke. To me, it's just as boring as actual bird watching. Pokemon Snap adjacent. Taking the photos was a good mechanic, but it's not something that you base an entire game off of. Something like Dead Rising, where in that game, at least the first one, you're taking photos, but that, since you play a photojournalist, that kind of builds your experience and gives you level ups and stuff. And there are things like luring zombies into a certain spot so you can take photos with certain items, and that gives you extra points, and the number of zombies you photograph. So, I didn't really see anything like that in the game, or like drawing certain types of birds out. I question the fact that it's just standing in the same spot, but we'll see how it develops over time. So let me read the Steam description for you. Birdseed VR. Snap pics of the chunkiest, cutest birds in VR. Relax in lush forests. Complete quirky daily quests and fill your journal. Whether you're birding alone or together with friends, get cozy and escape to nature. Is it a bird? A plane? It's a bird. A really, really cute one, though. Some of the features: cozy social multiplayer with online, play with a friend, share photos, enjoy nature together. The daily quests I mentioned, get the perfect shot and put them in your journal, and it kind of ranks them, sort of like with Dead Rising. It was sort of a ranking thing, whereas Pokemon Snap was more of a catalog these things on rails, and it was more about finding all of them and less about the composition of the photo. Suitable for seated play are the features. Definitely check it out if you want something that's just kind of relaxing. We'll see how the game develops. It made sense to have it in VR, but it's just generally not the kind of game I gravitate towards, but I can see the appeal. Check out Birdseed VR on Steam. And then, here we go. This is another one of the games that I saw that was one of my favorites. A game called Fresh Tracks. It's available now on all your major platforms. It's sort of a rhythm game on rails focusing on skiing, and you fight through a series of boss spirits called mythics. There's a minimal color palette that gives the game a very children's storybook look and feel. There are 28 songs in all, including remixes. Actually, I'm not sure if they're 28 or 29. I think they're 29, now that I think about it. The energy I got from it was an amplitude or a frequency, which are both games that were made by Harmonix. You're on a track and you switch tracks. For example, you got to do a button sequence on the bass track to clear it, and then you can do the vocals track and clear that, and you're just moving back and forth throughout the song, trying to string as many of those segments together to get higher point scores. One of my favorite games, rhythm-wise. But as far as switching the tracks, this kind of reminded me of that. But let me do the description of the game first. From the Steam page: jump, dodge, and fight to the rhythm of the gods in this thrilling music action game on skis. Take on obstacles and menacing enemies as you ski further into the darkness that has befallen the snow-covered land of Norwin. I was also struck by the amazing music from the intro tracks that I played. At the end, I was gifted the soundtrack on vinyl, so I've got a record of the Fresh Tracks soundtrack. That was really cool. It's hard not to compare it to Sayonara Wild Hearts, although that had more of a free movement kind of thing where you had to engage in button sequences, but most of it was collection through movement through different spaces. Similar in the case of the music, the soundtrack is amazing on that game as well. I enjoyed the game so much that I purchased it on both the PlayStation 5 and for my Steam Deck after the show, and I've been playing a decent amount of it in my own time. The character you play is a skier named Sky, and she is on a quest, and what she has to do is find these different mythics. When you quote-unquote defeat the mythic by completing their level, you unlock them as a selectable partner. The storylines and lore develop as you defeat these spirits because they tell you different stories or different parts of a story. You start out with Coda, and you find your first mythic, Sogvar. Once you complete his challenge, you unlock Sogvar to accompany you and provide his narrative of the different levels and the different stories. For example, once you get past Sogvar, at the end of going through the same number of levels to get to his level, he tells you a story of a dragon king and what happened to that dragon king. Coda kind of starts the story, and then she said for more information, you have to have him come with you. But what's really cool about selecting the different characters, you also get a choice of skis that you, as you progress, you unlock skis. And each ski has a little bonus perk associated with it. Those things that you select, the ski and the mythic, impact pieces of the music throughout the game. You collect items called whispers and echoes, and resin is something that you use to power up your weapon. You'll unlock weapons along the way, and each one of those weapons has like a special power. The one you start out with is a healing blade. Once you're running out of hearts, you can click on your right thumbstick button and it will give you a heal, which can be very helpful. What you use the whispers for, it's currency sort of for buying items as you progress from little wagons that at the end of certain levels, you can buy these charms and other things that will kind of give you bonuses. For example, one of the bonuses will give you a heart. One of the charms will give you an extra jump, things of that nature. The echoes are things that you collect, and you can unlock other things. I believe there are certain items that you can unlock with those echoes, but you can unlock songs. So that will allow you to practice the song so you're prepared the next time you select that track on your journey. You can buy charms. You can also find charms. There's enough unlocked diversity and unique music that kept me going. There's also an assortment of settings as far as the subtitles for the spoken narrative, and then also the lyrics of the song. Those are the positives. I do have some criticisms of the game. Like I said, wonderful game. I loved it, loved my time with it so far. But I think the difficulty as far as the track selection, as you play the story, at the end of the level, you'll get to branches and you'll be able to select from 2 or 3 different songs. Usually those songs will have a ski hill difficulty associated with them. If you're not familiar with ski hills, they've got the green circle, which is the easy hill, the intermediates, which are blue squares, and then the black diamonds, which are supposed to be the difficult ski trails. That's during the game. Before the game, you've got a choice of 4 different skill levels that will determine the overall difficulty insofar as how much health you have, how much luck, how much, like different parts of the game will change based on the difficulty you select at the very beginning. Those things are Traveler, more difficult is Explorer, next difficulty is Adventurer, and the final difficulty is Champion. I selected Traveler, but even on Traveler, the difficulty spike was kind of unmanageable at a certain point. I've gotten to the twins level. Those mythics are Fars and Dram, but I haven't even been able to even make a dent out of that level because it was just too hard. One of the things that made Sayonara Wild Hearts great was there was a way to bypass certain segments if you're having trouble. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for this game. One of the things I would recommend is, like, let's say you can't get past a Black Diamond level. A lot of the tracks have versions that are the green circle and the blue square. So if you had that ability to tweak it on the fly and say, hey, let me try this on the blue square. Hey, let me try this on the green. I've been playing 30, 40 hours of it, and it just got to the point where it's like, okay, I love the music, and that's why I play the game, but just the difficulty is just too much to overcome. So the first couple of levels are easy enough to get past, but when things get challenging, that's where it lost me, unfortunately. Even though it has those interesting elements as far as the storytelling and things, like I mentioned. A couple of other things I noticed that I actually passed on to Catherine. As you're traveling, there are certain parts where you'll either move left, move right, jump, duck, or lean left or right using the bumpers. Sometimes you have to duck and lean simultaneously. The problem comes in when you have to move and jump. Sometimes you'll jump when you want to move or move when you want to jump. That can be difficult as far as the controls. And I mentioned the fact that frequency and amplitude, a lot of the track movement is based on triggers and bumpers. So it's a lot easier to navigate the tracks that way. And I thought maybe a way around this, I made a suggestion of if you just limited your directional arrows to jumping and ducking, and then the left and right movement to the bumpers and use like the triggers for the leaning, I think that could be a possible way to make it more accurate. But I gave that suggestion. That's one of the settings that I wish you would have more control over, is changing your controls to fit the style of play or what you wanted to do. On some of the levels, you have the white ski background. It's kind of a snowblind thing, actually. The whisper targets for things that you collect. On certain levels, the whisper targets and the terrain, it was very difficult to know whether you had to do any of the movement type of things, like leaning and ducking, because the target blended into the background of the white snow. So there wasn't really enough for me on a couple levels. Still Mountain and Evergreen, those were like whitish backgrounds, and then the whisper targets were also white. So a lot of times it was difficult for me to see those. And that was both on PlayStation 5 and on the Steam Deck. I think it's a matter of making those things stand out a little bit more, and that would be a lot easier to see. And it would have made the game a lot more enjoyable for me, and maybe easier to the point where I could have completed more of the game. Also, unforgiving in the level completion department. If you fail a level, you'll drop all of your currency, which is fine, and it will give you an option to play that track over again on subsequent journeys to recollect those things. But I think that's just a little punishing. It is part of the game, but I don't think you would lose anything by allowing you to collect and keep them on subsequent runs to make it a little bit easier, because, you do get to a point where it's really difficult when you're on these runs, and that would kind of circumvent that possibility. And even practicing the different tracks, like I said, I got to a point where I just got yeah, I think I'm done. I'll put this down. And then when I'm missing the music, I'll go back to it. That's not to say that it's not a great game. It is a wonderful game. If you like any kind of rhythm games, especially ones that are a little bit challenging, I would say check it out on Steam. Thank you so much to Buffalo and Catherine for the gifts. And then we'll move on to the next game I saw, a game called Rebel Engine by Seven Leaf Clover Games, an Argentinian studio of about 10 members. Gianluca Mascaro showed me the game, which has been in development for about 5 years. We talked a little bit up front about the origin of the company name, which was based on, they were a group of folks who met in college and started working on this game together. The 7-person team who got lucky with their first project as far as it being supported, hence the name Seven Leaf Clover. Originally, the game was called Payloaders Strike, but David Oshry from New Blood Interactive remarked that the name was too long, so they changed the name to Rebel Engine. The Steam description is, Rebel Engine mixes the stylish combat of a hack and slash with the speed and gunplay of a 90s first-person shooter in a unique, fast-paced action game. Combine gunshots with melee attacks to create devastating combos. Lead the rebellion against the concrete megacorporation and liberate all of robot kind, your freedom fighters. The concrete corporation enforces total control over Ultima City and its sentient robot inhabitants. The corporate tower is both their home and their prison. They live condemned to a life of servitude to entropy, the human CEO, and concrete's profits. Rebel Engine, my guess is the engine being the rebellion itself. Payloaders Strike is kind of descriptive too, but I agree, Rebel Engine has more of a ring to it. It feels more memorable to me than Payloaders Strike. It does have a very unique look to it, cel-shaded mixed with a distinctive hexagon and hexagonal prism environmental design style, which was by choice, and it makes it striking and unique in its presentation, but also familiar. The gameplay, you use style as a resource, which will increase your score and also allow you to perform super moves, so you're kind of building that meter along the way. The story mode is the primary focus of the game, but they do see the potential in a player versus player mode in the future. They're nearing their last month of development and projecting to release in full in November. They promise a lot of options for customizing your difficulty in the form of dip switches, which will allow you to change various elements to make the game easier or more difficult. One of the options Gianluca mentioned was to change the speed of the combat, which will make it easier or harder. That was really cool. Check it out on Steam now. So the next game I saw was a game called Pax Autocratica from Multiverse Incorporated. If you check out their website, they describe Pax Autocratica as a satirical totalitarian colony sim with first-person shooter roguelite elements to it. The description is, bend citizens to your will through propaganda or purges, turn dissenters into loyalists or corpses, build a surveillance state, arm your enforcers, explode rebels, then lead the charge yourself in roguelike FPS raids. Every decision echoes, every bullet matters. Will you rule as a tyrant or something worse? So they do have a demo available right now on Steam. That kind of feeling game as far as this sort of satirical propaganda, very evident in a game like Helldivers 2, which is part of the narrative of that game. But this combines that sim element with it. So it's very interesting in that sense. What it was described to me as by Alexis, who is one of the co-founders of Multiverse Incorporated, he described it as a high-definition first-person shooter Cult of the Lamb with roguelike bits in between missions. As you build your base, you'll be able to treat its inhabitants in a number of ways, which will impact how your soldiers and the base inhabitants behave and interact with your colony. That can impact how you grow or make up your colony as far as developing it, but then also impacts the first-person shooter elements. From what I played, which was just the little bit of first-person shooter, I didn't have as much of an interest with the sim piece of it, but if it's anything like Cult of the Lamb, I could see where the appeal would lie, because that's sort of a roguelite beat-em-up feeling game. And this would be the same thing, except a first-person shooter-inspired game. The first-person shooter elements felt pretty solid. There wasn't a lot to accomplish in the bit that I actually played, but like I said, pretty solid. It seems like there could be a lot of depth with how the development of your government and base and things impacts the first-person portions of the game, so I'm really interested in it. The sim piece interested me the least of the bits, but if they execute it in any way like Cult of the Lamb, it kind of incorporates things together in a way that was very enjoyable for me. I really enjoyed my time with Cult of the Lamb. So I am looking forward to this when it releases fully later this year, so I'll be checking it out. Check it out on Steam and wishlist it. Thank you very much, Alexis, for speaking with me. It was nice talking to you. The one thing as sort of not really more of a critique, but they were very high energy over at that booth. And I can understand that the theatrics of the presentation of this, develop your government, and you'd have people who would be speaking the truth of your government. And so that was very cool, probably for people who were there attending as game players. For me, it was a little off-putting, mostly because of my social anxiety stuff. I mean, it wasn't horrible, it was manageable. They were obviously showing their enthusiasm for the game, which totally awesome. But for me, it's like, it kind of know your audience, know when to turn that on and turn that off. Being a member of the press, I was less interested in that theatrics piece. But like I said, it's just food for thought for other shows and things. Just know your audience. I do understand why they made that choice, because they were trying to get people enthusiastic about the premise. But anyway, thank you so much. Check that out. And then from the Skystone Games booth, the person who I was put in touch with, I'm not going to say his name because it seemed like he didn't have much enthusiasm in showing me these games, unfortunately. Later, I checked them out on Steam and I got a little bit more interested. There were two different deck builders that were presented that I played. In general, the genre is a little bit more compelling to me now that I've played Star Invaders and I've loved it so much. I'll be talking with Eddie. I don't know if you remember last year we talked with him about the development of Star Invaders. When I met him at PAX 2 years ago, we recorded an episode which will be appearing probably in about 3 episodes. I believe Star Invaders is going to be my game of the year this year. But before then, deck builders were really not on my radar. Between that and Balatro, those two games kind of opened that universe to me as far as liking or playing those games. I enjoyed myself thoroughly with both of them. And to a lesser extent, there's a new game that came out called The Bazaar, which is sort of a deck building game involving you pick a character and then they have a set of cards that as you progress, you can buy them from vendors. Day by day, you can level them up. You can do things to each card or each thing you place on, a mat. And that mat will auto battle based on what you select and how you place them on this board. Some cards will give you, for example, hasting other cards. Each one will auto battle on its own timer. Certain cards are faster and can give you other effects like criticals or extra damage or raising the damage or shields. It's got some complexity to it. I've been only playing one of the characters. I believe there are 5 different ones that you can choose. They sell the characters separately, which little bit of an eyebrow raiser for me, especially considering you start out with 3 different characters that you can play. One of them I bought on sale along with the game purchase, so that one was okay, but then the other one costs an extra, I believe it's like $30 or something. So right now I'm having enough fun with just the one character that I play consistently. I'm trying to find the perfect combos to beat all the enemies I face. Like I said, deck builders wasn't my thing. But through those games, I'm now open to it. And these 2 deck builders, that the guy who shall be remain nameless, who didn't seem really enthusiastic or, I guess, welcoming. I just felt like, I was just another one of the people who were attendants to see this. And he really didn't talk to me too much about the development of the game or anything. I don't know if it was me or, reaching the end of the day and losing kind of my steam, or if it was a him or a combination of both. But anyway, one of the games that I was shown was called Arcane Eats, developed by Wonderbelly Games, which is an independent game studio based in Seattle. Let me read the promotional information. Arcane Eats is a roguelike deck builder with a delicious twist. Think like a master chef, balancing resources as you strategically combo ingredients to subdue hungry hordes. Recruit a legendary kitchen crew and rise through the heroic cooking guilds before the hunger consumes us all. What happens is you'll get people who come into your restaurants and you'll unlock different cards that you use to create these dishes. Arcane Eats, the best deck building mechanics get spiced up by cooking elements to add a new depth of flavor and strategy. Every turn is a strategic puzzle as you balance your energy and ingredient cook times and try to keep your cool in the face of customer whims and whining. Play ingredient cards onto enchanted cooktops, modify them with a kitchen of magical tools, then serve your meals to hungry hordes and get paid. Improvise fantastical meals like a master chef, craft your own cuisine from hundreds of mythic ingredients, magical kitchen tools, and culinary spells. Then invite your customers to sit at the chef's table as you cook up an adventurous meal full of juicy combos with the cards you have at hand. Flame broil some red dragon ribs, forge golden delights in dwarven deep fryers, and draw a salt circle to perform a happy hour ritual. No recipes required. It was kind of a fun, the art style is really cool. I got just a limited amount of playtime with it, but it does look fun enough to pique my interest. Game overview, pretty much what I mentioned before. So yeah, Wonderbelly Games in Seattle, indie game studio run by Andrea and Bob Roberts. Before going indie, Bob led the design team on Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, while Andrea worked on the Fable series and more at Microsoft. Now they follow their hearts and their bellies to make deliciously cheeky strategic games for you to devour. It was very cool. I want to check it out, and hopefully I can maybe get someone from Wonderbelly Games to come on the show and talk about the design of this game. So thank you for showing that at the show. And then there was a game called Black Jacket, developed by MipumiGamesGmbH, which is a German abbreviation for, pardon my German, Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung, which basically translated, it's a company with limited liability, very similar to what's called an LLC here, which means that shareholders' personal assets are protected from the company debts. To form a GmbH, you must have at least one shareholder and a minimum share capital of 25,000 euros and follow specific notarization and registration process. That's just a little aside. A little bit of trivia for you. Mipumi Games is an independent games development studio based in Vienna, Austria, and they worked on a number of larger projects. They do have some original games that they developed, like Howl and The Flower Collectors, The Lion's Song, and this upcoming game, Black Jacket, which has a trailer, so I mentioned it. It's also got a Steam presence. But Mipumi Games also has worked on, I'm guessing on a contractual basis, some major titles like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, South Park Snow Day, Alan Wake, Control, Hitman series they've worked on. So they assist other studios in coding games, but they also have their originals. The description of Black Jacket is: gamble your way out of hell in this blackjack-inspired roguelite deck builder. Play powerful card combos or cheat to outwit your opponents and earn your freedom. Win their soul coins, bribe the ferryman, and uncover the story of those who stand in your way. It's got a very stylistic look to it, and you've got your cards that do different things, similar to something like a Balatro. They call it Blackjack Evolved. Play blackjack against the restless souls wandering in the hellish afterlife. You play for their ferryman coin, essentially, so you can escape, stack your deck with powerful cards, control the table, bend the rules, and beat the odds, unlock near infinite possibilities of card combinations and strategies with each run, collect artifacts, card suits, and curses to get an edge, get to know your opponents, their stories, and yourself to break the cycle. So it seems like it could be a very interesting game. I believe it's very early on in development. It doesn't really have a release date. It doesn't have a presence on their website either, but they're projecting 2026. So if you like those kinds of deck builder games, very much akin to Balatro, be sure to check it out if they got a demo when it comes out. I got also a limited amount of time with that very short bit that I played, but it was intriguing also, not unlike the other deck builder game, Arcane Eats. I'm going to keep an eye on those and see what happens when they come out. Hopefully they'll get a couple of demos, check them out on Steam, and make sure you wishlist and follow them. That was the conclusion of day 3. Now, like I've been doing on the other days, we've got a couple of very short bonus reviews. The first one I'm going to do is a game that I played called Chronicles of the Wolf, a game promoted by P-Cube Games. You play as Matteo Lombardo, the last apprentice of the Rose Cross Order, on a quest to hunt the infamous beast of Gavauden. Dark and thrilling platform adventure, fast-paced combat, challenging exploration, and deep storytelling make it a must-play for fans of the genre. Published by Pixel Heart and P-Cube. Developer is Migami Games. I got the review code for this. I don't agree with the... Well, okay, so let me just say this. This is very much inspired by Castlevania on many levels. You do have some things you unlock along the way, like weapons, secondary weapons. You'll collect armor. You can equip that armor on your character, but at its core, it's pretty much Castlevania. The enemies, and I mean Castlevania as far as the early ones, like, you know, your Nintendo Entertainment System versions, because it felt nostalgic. The graphics are very much of the age, with the exception of there are some vocal parts and things that are spoken, but overall, it just feels like a nostalgic game, but not the kind of nostalgic game I'm interested in these days. I could probably get into it and play it, but after playing a couple of hours, it's like, I've played this game before. It's Castlevania. And, you know, it is, like I said, it is for some people. I would say if you aren't familiar with the Castlevania series, you might want to just check this out. If you like that style of game, definitely check it out. But to me, it was a little underwhelming just because it felt like a Castlevania clone. And I think what you need to do as far as nostalgic games is you need to mix that nostalgia with something new or exciting. Like when I played Ender Lilies, that had a nostalgia component too, but the freshness came from the artwork and the way that you battled the enemies and the way you unlocked your powers. So it had kind of a wonder to it and a new feel. You can have a game that looks older by design, that looks nostalgic. Something like Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo was like that, where it looked nostalgic, but it had a fresh sort of feel to it and a speed and a challenge that was good. I don't know if I just didn't get far enough in the game. Unfortunately, Chronicles of the Wolf didn't grab me like other nostalgic games did, and I don't really have an answer to how to make that different. there are going to be some people who really enjoy this game strictly based on the fact that it feels just like Castlevania in many ways. So if you're interested in that kind of game, I would say check it out. See if it's your cup of tea. Like I said, I got a review code, and thank you very much to the folks at PCube for that. The next game, as far as bonus reviews are concerned, I don't even know if I should call this a game more than kind of a choose your own adventure with elements of walking around parking lots. The game is called A Dream About Parking Lots by Interactive Dreams, published and promoted by Take It Studio, ! Let me read the description. Look for your car in a series of mazes and parking lots while you talk to your therapist about why you keep dreaming about them. Look for your car using your car key alarm thing to find out where your car is in a series of different parking lots while you're talking to your therapist and sort of doing a choose your own adventure type of thing. The game itself is 30 to 40 minutes long. It's got retro style graphics. It says it's an existential story about feeling lost in creative blocks based on real dreams. I don't know if I'm going to play through it again. I did play through the full game. The story itself, I think it had some promise, but it wasn't. Just the tone was a little off to me, because it tried to do some humor along with these elements of talking with your therapist. And I kind of lost the story in the quote-unquote action part of it, which is just basically a maze. We're just trying to find your car. And it didn't even feel like a game. It felt more like an interactive story. I don't know if that makes sense. But the game piece of it wasn't very challenging. It didn't seem like there was any replayability in storylines or anything like that. If there was, I think the game would have been better served by maybe including a tree of some sort that would allow you to look back once you've completed the game in the 30 or 40 minutes and see if there are branching pieces that change the story, or maybe even change the different mazes as you progress. But, I mean, it was an interesting concept. It just didn't strike me as a game. It struck me as a story that didn't really connect with me, unfortunately. Interesting concept to explore, finding your car in parking lots and dreams and what that means, or maybe an assortment of types of dreams that are common like that would be interesting going forward. So, check that out out of curiosity, I would say. See if it's your kind of thing. If you want to be told a story, maybe that's the game for you. Very short. Check it out on Steam. So that is the conclusion of the Day 3 show. I don't know, maybe we should change our name from the Too Vague Podcast to the Day 3 show, but I don't think people will understand what it is. Actually, now that I mention it, maybe they don't understand what the Too Vague Podcast is in the first place. Stay tuned. Next week is Day 4. And like I said, we've got the episode coming up where I talked with Eddie about Starvaders, and I did a little review conversation with Nora about that. I also have my final 4 game review code episodes that I'm going to do then. We got a couple of shows coming up that really exciting. One with Andrew, probably about the word oblique. And then I told you on the last show, I spoke to Karen from IGDA, International Game Developers Association Foundation. She has agreed to maybe be on the show when she gets back from a trip she's taking in November. So that could be a lot of fun. I got a lot of contacts this year from other folks, the developer, or actually the designer of Fractured Blooms is interested in also being on the show. So perhaps he will be on. I've got a lot of prospects this year as far as people to be on the show. So that's exciting. And maybe we'll get a few more from this show. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. My name is Ben, and have a wonderful night. Bye.